Tantra Illuminated with Dr. Christopher Wallace is a journey through the depths of the human experience, as viewed through the lens of the tradition called non-dual Shaiva Tantra. This multi-format podcast delves into the fascinating world of classical Tantra and its intersections with philosophy, neuroscience, psychology, human development, and the broader world of spirituality. Hello, dear listeners. Just a note to say that if you enjoy this podcast, please consider subscribing to the Tantra Illuminated platform. The podcast is completely unmonetized. We don't accept advertising, and we never will. And it would really help us if you subscribe to our platform, which offers literally hundreds of guided meditations, courses, workshops, at-home retreats, and much more, covering the full range of tantric philosophy and practice. So you can go to learn.tantrailluminated.org to subscribe. This week's episode is my second conversation with Kieran Trace, who is a teacher of not only awakening, but also living in the world with awakened values. And she's a very interesting and unique teacher. And she doesn't have any specific connection with classical Tantra or any other established lineage, and yet I find her work mostly compatible with classical Tantra and also just very interesting. And I think it's valuable to have perspectives from people who've been through the awakening process, independent of any lineage, as well as those who are associated with lineage. And so both are represented on this podcast. If you haven't heard my first conversation with Kieran, it's probably better that you do so that you understand more of where she's coming from. Now, the conversation you're about to hear was actually recorded before the other one, but the other one serves as a much better introduction to Kieran and her work. So this conversation that you're about to hear was a very wide-ranging one, going kind of all over the place in a good way, though at one point we did go off on a tangent that we decided to edit out later. I think you'll find there are many gems to discover here. Enjoy. I'm very happy to be speaking with Kieran Trace, who I've known about for a while. I don't remember how I found out. Maybe I found out about you through Angelo DeLulo, through his, you appeared there, and I was like, whoa. And I think Angelo makes a great contribution, but honestly, when you when you were talking with him, I was like, whoa, now this is next level, and it's then I got your book, Tools for Sanity, and I looked at that and I'm like, this is amazing, and started listening to your podcast some, Humans Decoded, and yeah, just appreciating what you are bringing and how it doesn't look like what all the other non-dual spiritual teachers are doing. It comes from a place of awakeness for sure, but it's also unique, and it's authentically you, which is of course part of what you teach. So welcome welcome to my podcast, and if you could say anything you like, but also share about what is the heart of this work for you. Like, what do you do with your students? What is the most exciting part of this work of teaching, facilitation, whatever we call it for you?
Well, hello, Christopher, and hello, all of you beautiful students and admirers of Christopher. I am one of them. I am one of you guys also. Um, Big fangirl of the work of Tantra Illuminated. Um, and it warms my heart so much to learn that you've been, listening to the podcast. It's kind of a very authentic, real conversation between three awake beings who have very different points of view, um, sharing the journey of the awakeness from a very specific point of view, which is I kind of mapped human behavior patterns and these human behavior blueprints. I call them the different avatars that we're born into. Um, and so that podcast looks at all these different human blueprints that we each bring to the table and what how life can be through that blueprint. Um, so uh, so it kind of is like the question of like what's the heart of the work? What's the heart of my process and my work? And it really is kind of there in the podcast somewhat, which is that like each of us is this one field of consciousness expressing itself. And as that one field of consciousness expressing itself, there are these gorgeous nuances and uniquenesses that represent each being. And we are the only carriers of that nuance, that collection of unique experiences, expressions, um, and sort of creations. And I don't kind of mean that in terms of like throughout time. I mean that like in a single moment, in a single originating moment, you are a whole collection of woven light source, so uniquely expressed that it is like giving birth to something so special. And when the one field of consciousness is giving birth to something so special, it feels like I want or it wants a loudspeaker on that. But we have this huge conditioning to eclipse all of that. And so a lot of my work and a lot of what I'm focused on is how do we bring ourselves to more and more authenticity, like the authentic expression of myself as one being me in all its beautiful, nuanced ways in a single moment versus this enormous amount of, I call it sometimes the debris, the crud, the stuff, the baggage, constantly pressurizing us to be other than ourselves. So the podcast is like one arm of that teaching, that it's like this real celebration of like how do you find that authentic self in any moment. What is the authentic self? We have I've articulated these like 5 avatar blueprints, which I really see are kind of linked up to like the old, like Middle Earth, like gnomes and fairies and dwarfs and elves, and to really outline the way that specific avatar is going to move to give people permission to lean back into the authenticity of how they are being expressed as source in a single moment. So on the one side, one arm is just so deeply the deep permission to just be oneself. And then a really essential arm of what I want to bring to the table, or I hope to bring to the table, is that we don't have to suffer here. It is not a requirement um, of being human. And I know that's such a radical statement, because the experience of getting up in the morning and getting through the day can be really, really challenging and enormously painful for a lot of us on planet Earth. And I just don't want to keep hanging that flag up for humanity. In fact, I, I map a process to be here in each of these beautiful moments of source expressing yourself in joy. That doesn't mean that we have gone past being human. Like there's so many storylines. Like being human is suffering, and then recognizing ourselves as the one is this ascension beyond the human experience. And when you finally come back at life after life after life, and you've worked through your karma, you'll finally ascend and you won't have to come back. And I just to me, that's not reality or truth. And one gorgeous field of source, one field of consciousness is expressing in this moment as human, as everything looking at your eyes this moment, so inclusive of everything. And what would it be like for each of us, every single one of us? Now, I don't think that that's my job necessarily, but just imagine a world where every one of us were being wholly ourselves and loving it. And just loving the journey, the hills and the valleys, the hills and the valleys. It doesn't all become, or I guess it doesn't, the peaks and the valleys. It doesn't all become peak, 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 peak. I'm not talking about like a life of peak experience. I'm talking about peaks, valleys, peaks, valleys, peaks, valley. And the whole thing is just a great ride.
Mm, mm.
And that's very possible. In fact, most of the people in my community are living that constantly. And that's really my passion. That's why I became a teacher when I really didn't want to be. And I spent a lot of years resisting teaching. And then, a pivotal experience happened to me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to wade in here and map for people how to have a really good time being human.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And let me just say that, we were talking a bit before I started recording. And in those first few minutes, like I had never spoken with you before face to face. And in those just a few minutes, I was completely convinced, because you never know, but like people are out there saying stuff and everything. Oh, it sounds like some interesting thing. But then when you meet, you're like, oh, okay. And what I saw in you was just this authentic joy, this authentic presence and embodiment. And it's, it's like the whole spiritual path could be spoken of as learning how to fully arrive in this body, in this life, in this world, and it's like, oh, just it's such a joy and in a way a relief to meet someone who's arrived in their form. And it puts everyone at ease. It's like there's just a beautiful synergy, as you were talking about recently on your podcast. It's like if you truly embrace your freedom and authenticity, like that ripples and affects everyone around you, even if the effect is not immediate. There can be some readjustment, awkwardness, blah blah blah, but there's some effect. And yeah, I just want to appreciate that joyful authenticity that you're bringing. And that there's a lot of the sort of traditional non-dual meditation teacher is a kind of serious man, a serious middle-aged man. you know
Totally. White,
and
a white middle-aged
yes,
man. Yeah, I don't know why that is, but
yeah, well, it's, yeah, just that, like, I think it's a historical accident, right? Because in the original context of India and these cultures that originated these teachings, it wasn't these teachings weren't the province of the elite per se, but it just so happened that, like, in the transmission of the teachings to the West, that the demographic that
got reached first was a privileged demographic, and then so they end up becoming the first teachers. Anyway, so there's a whole thing there,
We
right?
Yeah, but we do have, because you must know this, right? Because we do have, there's a whole lineage of females, women transmitting, right? Because even Christ and Jesus, the early church, is all being passed through women. We're just not, we just have this editorial movement of the historical stories that just cut out and leave on the floor those movements. But I think we see, like, definitely in Asia, and definitely um, in, like the Middle Eastern or Constantinople and Prussia areas, we definitely have a lot of transmissional teachings. I don't know the language for it. Your language is so beautiful, but we have this female arc to it, and certainly people of color. Hello, like.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the tantric tradition, the most important, the most sacred, the most powerful teachings were held by women teachers, and gurus and transmitters, dakinis, yoginis, and so on. But there was this reassertion of patriarchy, especially when the Muslim conquest came to India. And so history wends its weird way. Part of what actually I'm trying to do is bring to light some of these teachings of the female masters, the yoginis of 1,000 years ago.
Oh,
Um,
yum, that's
yeah,
fabulous.
and it's it's
Yes.
it's it's not easy work. You have to like do some excavating, you
But
know.
see, this is the uniqueness of you, Christopher, right? Like, you can understand so practically what those teachings are. They're not esoteric. That language isn't removed from you. You've taken the time in your life, an enormous, amount of time in your life, to become intimate with these languages and what's being said about consciousness. And so it's like, oh my God, that's so perfectly, uniquely you to bring that to us, these lost, powerful teachings that were
Mm,
edited out of history, but actually you have such an intimacy and a practical awareness of what that's being spoken about. So it's like, oh my God, yes.
yeah. Well, and there's a reason, like, I see how, even though most of the meditation and non-dual teachers have been men, I see how in the next generation and the one after that, it's women who are going to take this forward, because like in almost any gathering of this kind of direct spirituality, you have more women. You have like this, and not only more numerically, but also uh, women take on average. Of course, there's a million exceptions to every rule, right? But
Sure.
taking it more into the body, taking it more into the everyday life, whereas us men, including myself, in for most of my life, are content to just understand it, to sit in the armchair and understand it. And like it's my mostly my women students who are like, oh, they're taking it into the visceral, embodied experience more. And I'm like, wow, so I want to bring the teachings of the yoginis of times past and give to them, because they're the ones who are gonna take this forward, you know.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful that we start to have, more voices at the table than, you know um a lot of sort of, even, in the last 10, 15, 20 years, the spiritual conferences or the gatherings where we have a lot of non-dual teachers in one place. We're seeing a lot of them, it's usually middle-aged men who have the main stages, and the main microphones. Right, when we're adults, the whole thing can be caught up and much more equal across the board, if there's some consciousness to it. But yeah, there's a lot of,
Yeah.
like, there's a biological component that says that speaks to men having much greater motor skill and adaptive skill and
Hmm.
resilient skills, and females having much greater language skills and communication skills and integration of language skills. but being quite weak in
On
terms of
average, because
these
what
are
happens
definitely
is that,
averages, absolute
yeah, people
generalities.
go, hey, wait a second, like, I know a counterexample, but they're not understanding that we're just talking about average, on average, and of course there's going to be counterexamples because averages are just averages across huge populations.
Yeah, and I think it also brings us down to that uniqueness. What is that uniqueness that consciousness is being you? Um, we're talking about uniqueness and diversity as a strength, not as a weakness. We don't require equality. Source isn't requiring equality like this.
That's the
And
key. That's the key, is like, I know where you're coming from. And the thing is, when people hear any sort of comparison, they imagine they're hearing a hierarchy being established when that's not what you're
right.
doing, that's not what I'm doing. And it's like, can you hear a comparative exploration as a celebration of diversity instead of establishing a hierarchy, or attempting to subvert the current hierarchy with a new hierarchy? That's not what's happening.
Oh, I love that you bring that up in language that way. I am so terrible of that. I never understand hierarchies. I never understand this comparison. I literally just, I don't have it. I didn't have it before I woke up. I don't have it now. I'm so terrible. It's a real blind spot for me. And I love so much how you language that, like many people's mind, without even them being aware at all. It's a subconscious movement that they are overlaying a comparison and overlaying a hierarchy. And for me, that always is like, in language and in conversation, I'm always challenged by that blind spot, because it's like, how is that being subconsciously overlaid across everything when it doesn't exist in reality? There's zero reality. Reality is not comparing. Obviously we have the koans of the, like, ash tree and the oak tree. Like, they're not, one doesn't have more hierarchy than another. And um, diversity is the strength. Diversity is the value, and the uniqueness. These are values, um, by consciousness, by reality. But it is like, there is this stuff. There's the debris, the gunk that we, subvert all those uniquenesses and diversities in ourselves.
Yeah, because status games are so embedded in human interaction that most people, even people who are way into spirituality, they don't often realize hierarchy is nothing but a mental construct. It only exists in the minds of some people, the
Yeah.
majority of people, admittedly, but that doesn't make it real. It's just a thought. But it's so embedded in our society, and the attempt to gain status, and concern with status is so embedded in our society that that's something that's quite hard to uproot without a fairly radical awakening that just uproots it for you, which can happen.
In
But
my
the
work, we
work
would
to
call it
uproot it
out
is
as a
good.
belief system. There's a belief system called unworthy or not good enough. And that belief system is subconsciously painting everything with these shades of what is more worthy, what is less worthy. Like, how do I belong? How do I not belong? Can I be loved? Can I not be loved? And so these belief systems are painting this comparison point of view all the time. And that comparison point of view is incredibly painful, um, to walk through. And so it's gorgeous to be able to at least bring some kind of language and awareness to that experience. And even, like, just realizing in this moment, you have more language skill than I have. You have much more intimacy and much more communication skills based on your uniqueness, how you're life has unfolded for you in the studies and the passions than I have. And so here's this beautiful example in a way of like, actually, you personally have logged way more communication hours and have considerably more language at your disposal than I do. And we both sort of talk for a living, you know? But
Yeah.
you have logged way more hours than I have. And that's the uniqueness of you and I, even though yours
Yeah.
is a male brain and mine's a female brain.
Well, and this is the interesting thing is like somehow most people don't intuitively get the simple fact that however much you know about a group on average, whether that group is men, women, or non-binary people, whether the group is the wealthy people, poor people, whether the group is black, white, whatever, however much you know factually and statistically about a group on average, it fails to be predictive of anything concerning the person right in front of you at that
Yes,
moment that you're
100%.
meeting. And that's
And
such an
even
important,
because
like, why are they not teaching this in school?
I know, and because even the moment itself is so unique, right? And so to be able to understand how I love the way you said that, like like you could summarize spirituality into this one thing of like arriving, you know, and it's not even me arriving; it's the moment arriving as me, and it's like willing to let go of our allegiances to knowing, to knowing how we will be presented in any single moment, how we will show up in any single moment, how other people will perceive us in any moment. And that is a very courageous movement to undo ourselves and let the moment show up as ourselves, and us being in the position of I don't know is a very open-handed and glorious sense of freedom inside the person.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, because I had to go on a very long journey of amassing knowledge only to discover that not knowing, or rather knowing that you don't know, is actually where it's at. But I had to learn all the things and then have this realization that it's the openness that results from knowing that you don't know, which is true aliveness. And the whole time, but I had to go on that journey, and some of us do, you know, but
Oh,
it's
but the
it's
whole also, it's like it didn't then let go of everything you had amassed. This is what's
right.
so incredibly beautiful about the moment. So then the moment arises, let's say, as Christopher in this experience, the moment is arising as Christopher, and then it is using all these like one of the things you amassed is not just a lot of knowledge but an integrated knowledge. You found how things linked up, and you understood how where the connective points were between these different tantra practices and these different spiritual practices and these different spiritual leaders, and where the connective points were. So there's a mass of knowledge, but then it undoes itself in the realization of itself, and then this beautiful aliveness emerges, right? The twinkle in the eyes, the like open-handed laugh, and let the knowledge go. But then the moment reassembles itself as Christopher, allowing that same beautiful, the precision of language, the integration of the knowledge, making this very practical teaching arrive, which I am sure is as surprising to Christopher as anyone else. But then it
Yeah,
makes sense of what you had to do in the past. It wasn't
yeah,
just without intelligence. It wasn't
yeah,
just seeking knowledge, because the intelligence of it now is coming to harvest
yeah,
by source itself.
yeah. And I've never tried to talk about this before, but it's as if there was all the knowledge getting learned, and it's like mapping categories and everything. But with awakening, what happened for me, at least, is oh, all that stuff that I thought I knew, the real knowledge is in the relationality. Like, I saw everything that I had learned from a whole new perspective, and a more meta perspective, because I'm like, oh, there aren't even, it's not like there's even facts per se, right? It's relationality. It's if you get the insight into the relationality within the structure, then you can spin the structure any different way, the structure of understanding and relationality, and then you can talk about it from this angle, from this angle, from any angle, because you see that relation, the fluid, it's not even static, it's a fluid, dynamic, relational structure, a pattern of being. And that was like the big, in a way, the big revelation is that nothing is fixed, but there is pattern, and that could be seen with regard to the knowledge that had been previously amassed and which had been fixed, if that makes, it's going to make
It
sense to
totally does,
you.
because source is pulling all that beautiful, information, knowledge, connective points. It pulls all that out of you in a moment. And then in a moment, you're looking at, as you're saying, like the meta, and where those connective pieces can be so fluid and remain connected. And that what I love so much also about that is it's a spontaneous movement of the moment, uh, where source is being Christopher, and utilizing every aspect of Christopher, like every bit of the unique, nuanced element of this being, gets woven in the tapestry of the moment, and it feels so delicious and freeing to be so fully utilized, and so remarkable how source will do that. It's not something we could have ever conceived was possible in ourselves. You thought you were on this track, and then source grabs every bit of you, utilizes you completely, and puts you on this other track, and it couldn't be more fulfilling.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Yeah. Well said. um, yeah, it's amazing. You said it perfectly, so I won't add anything,
But we
but I
can
want,
bow, right? In that gratitude, and everyone who's listening gets the same intelligence about every part of your life. Like, we look at our lives and we can see so many regrets or mistakes or really painful chapters, heartbreaks, and we might think there isn't this incredible intelligence to it, but there is. And if you can see from that meta place that you're speaking of, where you're seeing from, you bow in this enormous humbling at how important and intelligent and fulfilling every element of the incarnation has been. And then the
yeah,
invitation is sort of like, how do we, with all these filters and all these debris and all these ideas that I should not have done this, I regret my actions, I hurt these people, I, failed here, I missed this opportunity. How does that get like seen through and the intelligence brought forward? And one of the things I love so much and what I teach is you kind of suspect it already. it's like it's like you can't quite see through the illusion, but part of you already understands that the worst heartbreak you survived actually led to some incredible opportunity and insight, or
yeah,
that
yeah.
cancer.
But not just opportunity and insight. It's even deeper, right? You know this because it's like everything that happened in your life and other lives too. Everything that's happened has perfectly set you up for awakening. It's the perfect
Absolutely.
setup. And if you've
Yep.
already had some awakening, then whatever happens since then is the perfect setup for the next phase of awakening.
God,
And that
yes.
that gets seen so clearly, and it's like so crazy because before the shift you couldn't suspect that. It just seems random and cruel, and life is just fucked up. And then later you see I was perfectly set up for this awakening.
And every one of those moments whether you define it as a moment of failure, a moment of dullness, a moment of disconnect, a moment of pain, or a moment of like joy, every one of those moments was equally endowed with the same amount of source light, fulfillment, and intelligence. And that's not something our brain can understand, but something in our heart has an inkling of it. And really, that's the thing I harness in my work is like, you know this already. So let's just get the debris out of the way and map the intelligence that your being is already smelling out in your life.
Yeah, but you also I think you tend to work with people who the spark of awakening has already sparked, even if they don't know it, they don't sense it even, but it's there. Because if it hasn't sparked yet, somebody can honestly think, no, that I'm just, that this was just a horrible, unlucky thing that happened. There's no good. There's no good to be. People. Some people do think that way.
I'm a very polarizing human in the sense that every part of my being is so authentic, or as you would say, landed. I speak truth very directly. And if someone on their journey is not ready for that just pure truth, they will hate me. They will hate everything I say. They will not
Yeah.
enjoy it at all. And so it's definitely, I often say, like, reality, source, like this one consciousness is very inclusive. But Kieran Trace is very exclusive because I'm only talking about reality and I'm only talking about truth. And if you want layers and like buffering and cotton batting between you and reality, then you're not going to be at my doorstep. You're not talking to me. But if you're so hungry and so ready for reality and truth, absolutely, you know.
Yeah. Well, and this is why this is part of the benefit of the cross pollination of podcasting, because you come on here and I tell people, and I am telling people that you are someone worth listening to, and that that matters because it's like people are reactive. I mean, people might be reactive to me too. Some people might be like, "Oh, that guy's full of himself" or whatever. But when you're reactive to a teacher who is awake to whatever degree, has something to share, that reactivity itself like deserves a look. It's like, oh, the there's something to pierce through here. And okay, let me just come to an example. It's a little bit different example, but it works. Like when I first heard about your avatars and like, oh, everybody's either a hobbit or an elf or a dwarf or a gnome, or a fairy or a human, and I just was hearing it for the first time, and like the initial reaction in the mind is something like, well, this is weird. I liked everything she said before. Like that was bang on, and now she's talking some weirdness. I don't know what that is. But then as I started listening to the podcast, just to, cuz there's this draw. I mean, that's why you do anything on this journey. It's like you feel the draw and you follow it. And I realized, oh my God, well, like what she's doing, and your whole team, of course, is amazing, because through this paradigm, however silly someone might find the words, the labels, through this paradigm, you are truly helping people to radical self acceptance. And and there has to be radical self acceptance on this path. Without it, you end up kind of stuck, and there has to be this deep self-acceptance, and that's what you're facilitating through. It's like, oh, because people, they, as you might say, it's like if you have a dwarf or a hobbit nature and you're raised by parents who are gnomes or elves or whatever, then you just are down on yourself. There's something wrong with you, and and then you see, oh, like, no, this is just my nature. And there are many people with this nature, because there aren't so many classifications or avatars, or whatever system we're using. And then there's not only a self-acceptance, but a possibility to connect with others more effectively and authentically, honoring them for how they are. And of course, there's uniqueness within the scheme of avatars. And so this is just an example. It's like some people might start hearing that podcast and hearing these terms and be like, oh, this is weird. But once you understand what you're doing there, it's like, oh, there's incredible value to this vis-a-vis the very issue that most people seem to struggle with, this thing of self-acceptance or lack thereof.
Yeah, I love the way you're using that example because and we have examples across the board all the time. You know, you could literally, somebody could be listening to a female non-dual teacher and kind of zone out because they just don't get the language. Or it could be that, you know, I don't know, you could come across Dr. Wallace's stuff, right? And find yourself kind of bounced because there's so much knowledge, there's so much information, and then miss how freaking practical and connected what you're speaking is. And so there's a million opportunities for us to bounce off the teaching, but I think there's something beautiful that you're saying, which is like there is a call deeper in us. And whether we bounce or not, we're going to find ourselves back again and back again and back again. If you are called to truth, you will be, you know, back again listening to whatever offerings I have. If you are called to that practical connective place, if you've been sitting in different knowledge houses and listening to different types of beautiful spiritual knowledge, but just coming off, like it just steaming away, you're going to find yourself over here at Tantra Illuminated, where it's being brought into connection and practice, you know. Like so this is again, and I just can't, I guess every part of me is always saying it, whatever about you listening to in this moment is intelligent. Even if you bounce, it's intelligent because something will bring you exactly where you need to be. And you're either, you know, this one field of source playing the game of, I got to go find God, or you've found God and you're playing the God of integrating this humanness as God, this human system. So we're only ever pretending to lose God or pretending to find God as one thing. And so there,
Yeah.
you can't go too wrong because there's not much else going on, even though your
Yeah.
life might seem so wrong,
Yeah.
so lost.
Yeah. And the more you care about truth, whether you even call it truth, it doesn't matter, right? But the more you care about truth, the more assured you can be that you can't go wrong, you know, because of course ultimately you can't go wrong full stop, because it's just everything is the play of the goddess or whatever we want to call it, right? But for those who want to minimize the time spent floundering around aimlessly, caring about truth is the way to minimize it. And if
Yeah.
there's that context, like you say, even if at first you totally reject something, if there's something there you need to hear, you'll be brought back. You'll feel this pull almost against your will, or against the thoughts in your head anyway. And that's beautiful. Thank you for the reminder. You know, because people are
Yeah.
afraid of getting this wrong, of fucking it up, and even though they can't.
You can't. Absolutely. You know, I was saying this to someone last night. I've happened to have a life in which there's been a lot of violence. There's been a lot of, you know, just horror and terror and awful things, and a lot of nightmares. And I've been fortunate enough and lucky enough that every one of them brought so much consciousness to the table. And what I was saying to someone is like, you know, we have these primal gifts of like, I'm fucking up, or I'm not safe, or it's not safe to go further. And just what we're saying, like, it's like you can't go wrong and everything is safe. And there's nothing like understanding no matter what happens, you're always safe. But you can't understand that unless you directly understand that. It's not a concept.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so life will mirror shit for you that feels really unsafe or feels really like unknown or feels like you're getting it wrong. You know, life is going to mirror that up for you in order for you to have that experience and then see through it.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere you're going to go that you're not going to end up in the one.
Yeah.
There's nowhere you're going to go. And the one, if it's the one, then it's God. And if it's God, it's good. End of story. And it can have many, many, many faces to God as you teach yourself, and you just like flip the mask up from that scary devil coming at you. You just pull the mask off and see the face of God right there. Always, 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 always. And if it's you and you think you have to contort yourself into some kind of shape in order to actualize the awareness of source, then that life will mirror it. Life will mirror opportunities for that to come right at you, and then you'll your own direct experience is going to move you through it and see that it was all just illusions, and you ended up in
Yeah.
the same place of glorious connection to God.
Yeah, the place you never left but somehow overlook. You know, it's so bizarre.
It's so painful to hear that, isn't that? That you're sitting there but you've overlooked it. Oh, it's the worst.
I know. And it can be
Yeah.
frustrating. People can be like, I'm trying not to overlook it, you know. And that's the thing. Often the trying is actually part of the overlooking, weirdly.
Yeah, so much of my work is mapping that whole system, the system of the debris, the system of the overlay. By mapping that super clearly, it helps people be aware and let those layers peel off, so that they have clear eyes to see what they're already sitting in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this, because a lot of people struggle with this thing of I'm not good enough, even if they know intellectually it's nonsense, right? But they really feel I'm not good enough on this, that, or the other level, or in this, that, or the other way. And however language they use, for many people it boils down to this. And I sometimes have a hard time teaching antidotes to this, because to me it's like I don't even get how you could think that. Like, what do you mean not good enough? Like, not, what does that even mean? Like, that's
I
just
love that
such
that's your
total
blind spot.
nonsense.
That's awesome.
So can
Yeah,
you
yeah.
help? Like, why do people cling to this, and what's the antidote?
Well, the I think in some ways the word cling is less precise, and to say it's a subconscious overlay that's that's subconsciously happening, which is to say that it's like these filters. It's like this eyeglasses they put on, but they don't know they're putting it on. Like they don't notice that. And so what's happening is these lenses come on that filter everything through this coloration. And so because it's a subconscious movement, the antidote is making it conscious. And so the antidote is how do we notice those lenses? And one way of doing it is recognizing some of those more surface painful experiences that might hint the lenses are on, right? So on the surface, comparison, right? So comparison thoughts are happening a lot, right? That's a really painful grind that people can be aware of. If comparison thoughts are going through, chances are there's a lens on called worthlessness or not good enough. Also, the story of um, like I've I've failed, or I've got to try, like I'm going to try really hard. um that again, that lots of people are conscious of that. They're aware of this, like grinding down to try, and that can be just really, it can be you're a new parent and you're overwhelmed, and there's this like I've got to try to be the best parent ever, right? So they can hear that consciously. And if they're hearing that, then chances are those lenses are on. So it's like looking at some of those surface experiences that are much more conscious and having that be kind of an arrow towards these lenses, and kind of walking people back to go like, okay, if this comparison is going on, if you're seeing that this is, if you're mentally capable of tracking that comparison, let's step one level back and see if underneath the comparison is even just a shiver of fear or anxiety. And can you sense that fear? Can you sense that anxiety? And then most people absolutely can. And from that fear and anxiety, can we go one step back? What is it fearing? And then it's usually, I can see the lenses now. Oh, it's fearing I'm not good enough. And then the piece that they can't see, and it's not even essential, is I'm not good enough, so I will be abandoned. I am not good enough, so I will be left to die on the ice float. I'm not good enough, so I will be, and it's pointing to past lifetimes of absolutely being burned at the stake or whatever, whatever, whatever. But this is all to say that that subconscious overlay is, once we track or map a process for people individually to bring it to consciousness, now there's an opportunity to take the lenses off. And what's really beautiful about what you're saying is that because it's a blind spot for you, it's not actually a core belief system for you. And that's like, it's so beautiful because then you can be a transmission of what it's like to not have that belief system. Just like I am a transmission of not having, I don't know what hierarchy is. Like I don't know what that is. Like I don't even understand. So I end up being a transmission of just celebrating like all diversities, and never like one, I don't understand competition. Like I don't have a bone in my body that understands it. So I watch the Olympics and I watch sports and I don't understand how that's, because I don't have it, but I'm that
Yeah.
transmission of the space that it doesn't exist. And so I love it. So then you're
Yeah.
the space that transmits what it's like to be free of that particular belief system. You know, obviously you're going to have many others, but it's so gorgeous that you're free of that.
Yeah, I mean, I look at people. I can access this almost any time, but most easily with the students because they come with their earnest, seeking and their longing and their love and their open heartedness, and I just look at them and I'm like, "You're so obviously perfect. Like, how can you not see this?" And they're like, "Oh, but I have these flaws and I have these issues and this is really fucked up." And I'm like, "But that's part of your perfection. That's literally part of it, you know?" And yeah, I mean, but some people do, I guess, get the transmission of that, but it's amazing how persistent this unworthiness thing can
Yeah, almost
be.
everybody has it. It's really rare for someone to not have too much of that. Because, humanity is in this era is old. And, we've had many lifetimes of these misunderstandings about reality, and we believe the illusion. And life has mirrored to us opportunities for us to see through it, and it's not, been seen through. Um, and then we're kind of festering on a subconscious belief system for a very long time. And parents see this with their children all the time. They have their children, and their children came in with this stuff. Like
Yeah,
my child was born like this.
yeah. And I think also like one thing that's helpful is if the person can realize, of course, all true realization comes spontaneously, but to orient towards it is a good idea. And the realization that there's not anything you're supposed to be other than what you are in each moment, because it seems like the unworthiness often relates to this imagination about uh, uh, living up to something, measuring up, being seen by others as wonderful or whatever. And if there's not anything that you're supposed to be, if that's all just imagination, if that just turns out to be nothing but a fever dream, then doesn't that help the unworthiness fall away, or does there need to be more sort of inner excavation of the roots of it?
I think the inner excavation is necessary because we live in a society that hugely upholds the value of not good enough. There's like in competition, there's one winner. There's only one winner. It's like, how could there only be one winner? All those people doing gymnastics at the Olympics are incredible. How come they
Yeah.
don't all get medals? Like, I don't get it. And why
It's
are you
mad.
crying that you didn't get a medal? You're a freaking Olympian. Like I don't understand. But our
Yeah.
society really upholds this podium. Really upholds. So there's a very strong current upholding one has value and the rest do not, or the top three have value and the rest do not. And we're seeing this, you see this across every industry, not just sports, because we're living in a society still very propped up by very infantile belief systems. Now, that doesn't mean that you're caught in that. You can absolutely be free of that. You do not have to live in the consensus of culture in order to, like in fact, many super successful people in the world and liberated people, just didn't give two hoots about what was air quote expected. But I do think you have to pull out the roots of this in yourself, because so long as the roots still sit in your system, life will mirror those roots. I sometimes call it like you've got all this hard wiring for not good enough. And so that wiring is constantly mirroring, or you're constantly getting external reflection of that wiring. So let's go in and clean up that wiring for you. And once the wiring is running aligned and more clear, it will no longer be a reflecting surface mirroring in front of you. So I'm always a big
Yeah.
fan of, you got to pull it out from the roots. And you're super capable of doing it, and you're super capable. Everybody listening is super capable of doing it in a relatively, short amount of time, depending on if it's karmically ripe for you. If it's time, if it's really time,
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
will help you, fix the bad wiring.
Yeah. And there's a kind of painful irony because a lot of this wiring is from parents who are worried, will you be okay in the world, and then so they kind of message, they don't know what they're doing, of course, but they're messaging that you're not good enough, you need to be more, measure up, do better, because they're worried. I mean, just most parents. Obviously, there's parents who just don't even give a shit about their kids. But most parents, they're worried because they care. In other words, it's love. It's this weird thing of like it's based in love, but it lands for the child as this unworthiness, this lack of unconditional love, which they crave with all their being. Do you see what I mean? But it's actually coming
Well,
from
that's
love
only
because they.
one level of it, right? Because there's one you're describing so beautifully, a millennial parent. That's a millennial parent or a helicopter parent. Because in the boomers were not that kind of parent at all. The boomers just let their kids run wild. They loved them completely, but they were less in, like there was less of a focus of that, mostly, obviously, speaking generalizations here. But to get that subconscious belief system of, like I'm deeply flawed and I'm not worthy, you're one, sure, it may have been indirectly mirrored from a loving parent, but more where it's also coming from is the parent themselves have it. So it's an inauthentic, like the parent themselves is not standing in authenticity, so they can't offer it to their children because they don't fully embrace it in themselves, so it's coming from there. And then thirdly, what we've been sort of hinting at, or actually saying right out, is you're coming in from multiple lifetimes where that was really amplified, right? So you've got these three different places that this is all building this belief system from. And all of it is still very, very, very intelligent. It's the louder that belief system gets, the more you're going to peek through the illusion because it's just too painful to carry. And And so being born into a family that may be very, very loving, but indirectly mirroring it to you that you're not good enough because they're so concerned that they do the hovering thing. They get too involved. Um, and so, but that's only making the belief system even louder inside of you. And at some point, and everybody is unique and everybody's different, at what volume is it going to get before they have to drop it because it's just too painful to hold. And so every one of these steps or all the layers that came in there is equally intelligent, whether it was the past lives, whether it was being born into this family, whether it was that these were the parents and they were transmitting this, to you. All of it is like delicious, opportunities to see through it. And I say, make it
Yeah.
loud now because then you'll spot through it. Then it's too heavy. I don't love it if a belief system is only sort of humming along as a low, constant background. It's very hard to make conscious if you're not literally being burnt at the stake for it. Like if you're not being just
Yeah.
crucified against this.
Yeah. In fact, it's interesting because from the point of view of Tantra, this thing that gets taught in the yoga world of cultivate contentment, just learn to be content with things as they are. From the point of view of classical Tantra, that's a bad teaching because we say, like, honor your discontent. That's your ally, because the tip of the iceberg of discontent, it's actually existential suffering, and you need to feel your existential suffering to be motivated enough to break through God knows how many layers of bullshit to the luminosity of truth. And if you're trying to just cultivate contentment with what is, when that isn't yet your true experience, that's a problem. Right? It's like, to get intimate with our suffering, to turn up the volume on what's actually there, that provides this impetus. It just lights a fire under your butt to actually break through. And because and there has to be that intensity at some point on the journey. There has to be that intensity where you're like, I'm gonna break through to reality or die in the attempt. I don't know
I think
anyone
it's
who did.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic to have that level of intensity, but we have the mirror everywhere around that, like what you're talking about, like that contentment in the yoga practice. Or we define relationships as compromise, same fucking thing, right? Or we talk about rationalization. We really put on a pedestal rationalization. Or we really, really talk a lot about diplomacy, like, again, like in all these different ways society keeps saying shut the fuck up and learn to just take it on the head, like, but there is this real value in when it's just too painful for you to hold it, when there's that, and it has to be organic of your being. It can't be mentally you create it, but when organically you're feeling the pain, then you're going to want to look at what that thorn is and pull the thorn out. And one of the things that this practice, my teachings, your teachings, does is sensitize people so they can start to feel the thorn, you know, and bringing people into these connective invitations to the moment is where we start to develop that sensitivity. All of those connecting points create a more sensitized person, and that sensitized person feels those thorns. And then, my system, we map how to pull those thorns out. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Then, but do you get people saying, "Oh, I came to you so you could make me feel better, and now I feel worse"? Like, sometimes that has to be.
No,
It's
my people, it's the opposite. It's like I wanted to feel better. I wanted to have a much greater life. And now it's like a million times better than I could have imagined. Even what I imagined then, it's 1,000% better now. It's so much better. We don't. I don't. If it's
Yeah,
worse, then we're not doing the work.
yeah,
Pulling out
absolutely.
the thorns is delicious.
And
My
and
map,
and
anyways.
and maybe you it's entirely possible you have a more effective system than the one I've inherited. But it seems to me that sometimes people, if they're just looking for the feel good spirituality, and this is about truth, then it's like, oh shit, I have more thorns to pull out than I realized. I'm sensitized to them now, so it seems like things have temporarily gotten worse. But of course, like when they ask their inner wisdom, they know, oh, this is what has to happen, the sensitization. Like if they were numbing themselves, because so many people are numbing themselves and they think they're sort of happy, but they're numbing themselves with social media, with substances, whatever, and so they don't feel what's there to be felt. And if they stop numbing and sensitize, they're like, oh, there's all these thorns. But then of course they start pulling the thorns out, and then it's, thank God, this is way better. But some of them have to go through that interim little bit, however long it lasts. It doesn't need to be long, of like, oh, this rude awakening.
One of the things that I can offer is a very skillful map of how to pull the thorns out in a way that is delicious, joyful, beautiful. And and I wouldn't recommend people pull the thorns out unless they have a good map, because um and again, it's all intelligent, it's all fine, you're not going to go wrong, you're not going to have a problem. But I'm a really efficient and really practical person, so it's like, find good support people, find good mentors. Like if you're going to go take on this personal journey, um, don't isolate in there, like get a community around you, get support, get good teachers around you, get multiple teachers around you, get, different diverse fields of wisdom coming at you. Surround yourself, and that's going to give you the best opportunity to get through that. And we live in 2024, where everybody can go to YouTube and get so many beautiful alive teachings, and they can work with many different practitioners. And I don't know, I just think it's really wonderful. I just think it's such a rare time in humanity that there are so many teachers at the buffet table. Surround yourself with it, and go for it, because even if you're just an accidental tourist, you're going to still come out with something. I'm not a purist. I think it's like, um, give yourself every opportunity, and there are so many opportunities to pull those thorns out. And whether you're just going to sit and listen to the most beautiful satsangs, whether you're going to take the retreat and start to really get how all of this incredible knowledge is old. You're not the first person to walk this path before, and get that practical support, from Christopher. Like, oh my goodness, Angelo with Simply Always Awake has the most wonderful online retreats of transmissions of what awareness, pure awareness is. He's so great at it. Adyashanti has retired, but his teachings have not. And he is one of the greatest teachers just describing reality. He's right there at the forefront in the spontaneous moment, articulating what is reality, what is reality, what is reality. So each of us have something really beautiful we're offering. And we live in a world that this is like in your living room. What an incredible opportunity. And humanity currently, and I think most of your listeners understand this, is going through quite an intense shakedown of dharma. Like our bullshit is being called, and we've never had more teachers at the table helping you move through that bullshit. So surround yourself with the support. In my world, you do not have to suffer in order to be free. And I'll get you to look at those glasses that you keep putting on around suffering. Like if you think this is getting worse, then I'm like, let's look at the lenses that says it's getting worse. is it true? Is it real? You know, so liberation
Yeah,
for all is available.
it's true. It's so funny and weird that there are people who have a golden age mentality, meaning they look back to some golden age of spirituality and compare that in their mind to the modern degenerate age. And it's like, no, no, like, however, there were golden moments in the history of the world, spiritually speaking, but nothing like now. Like, if anything, the problem is that there's too much availability and the
Yeah.
person can just sort of flit here and there.
Discernment is, yeah, discernment's important in our world of access. Yeah.
But literally all the tools you need for awakening are here. They're available. If and you might have to dig sometimes, but unlike in the past where you had to sacrifice so much to get a fraction of these tools. This is the golden age. It's also a dark age in other ways, right? But it is also the golden age for spirituality, without a doubt.
And the non-dual teachings. I mean, how many people took Eckhart Tolle's online course through Oprah? I think it was like 13 million people worldwide. That's incredible. Just incredible. Because if you go back even just 20 years, there was like Osho and Krishnamurti. Like, who could you actually go visit and see? You had this
Yeah.
beautiful opportunity, um, to sit in ashrams and to actually, you know, be surrounded by the teachings. But that's a real rarity. Um, and
Yeah.
so, I celebrate the diversity and the value of all of these teachers sitting at the table, bringing all kinds of luscious teachings. And like everything, like TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, access to the knowledge is no longer a problem, but now we need to learn discernment tools. And
Discernment and like maybe patience, if that's the word, because the problem with those media like Instagram and TikTok and even YouTube is that people are just they're just getting these tiny little pieces, and you have to be willing to like go a little deeper. And of course there are people who listen to long form podcasts, but probably including this audience. But I suppose just even those little tidbits, they serve their purpose, because anyone who wants more, they're going to find their way from that tidbit to whatever.
yeah, access is always a beautiful privilege. And then we learn discernment. But yeah, in the mix of it all, and if nothing can go wrong, and if there's nothing to lose, and you are already it, then whatever space you move from is going to be an immediate response. You're either going to hurt, which is an invitation to look at yourself of where the pain is, or you're going to feel freedom and spaciousness, or you're going to be dumb. And all of that is the journey. It is the journey. And every one of them, the numbness is going to get you to become more sensitive and discern, which will show you the thorns. The thorns are going to help you to become more sensitive. And you might choose to do some numbness, fine. We talk about that in the podcast all the time. Short-term solution, short-term anesthesia to help, pull a thorn out isn't a bad thing. So again and again and again, you in your life, everything you're doing in this moment has so much intelligence because it is oneness. It is consciousness itself being you, and the external layers subconsciously coming on there to, edit parts of yourself or try to sculpt yourself into some kind of an image is only illusionary and will be blown away. But usually because it hurts so much,
Yeah.
sadly.
So let me just give a common example. I mean, I do have some, I don't know how many, but some thousands of students, and that has its challenges, but it also helps me see like all the different kinds of people in this world, and so a, a sort of example of somebody in their struggle process before they've had the first shift might be like, they try to practice, they sit for meditation, they try to do the practice, they feel like they aren't quite getting it, maybe they have a moment where something they drop into something for a moment, but then it's gone again, the mind reactivates. I'm just bad at this, I don't know if I'll ever get it, it's frustrating. And then their day looks like, oh, somebody liked the thing I did, and oh, that feels good. But then my real dreams, my real values, I've not finished those creative projects that I wanted to do, and I haven't managed to, I just procrastinate. Somehow I'm just procrastinating. Why am I social media doom scrolling when I know I have the capability to produce something? And then like da 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 da, right? And it's not always like this, but this is what it's like for a lot of people. And so how do you, like you were saying, like there's intelligence in everything, and I agree, I totally agree, but I'm just bringing you these hard cases because
No,
you can
I
handle
think what
it.
you beautifully articulated, because I would agree, that is very common experience. What you articulated is the belief system of not good enough walking through the day, right? So you just did a great job of that, right? And so we illustrated earlier that you're going to look at those superficial things, right? The death scrolling that's dull, the feeling of procrastination, the painful sort of sense of tragedy that I haven't really being utilized. Every one of those pieces signals back to this lens. There's a lens that's being looked at in this moment, looked through, and that lens is not good enough. And so, can you see these elements that you just described out on the surface, and you're actually feeling them? So can we get conscious of that? And then can you feel that fear and that anxiety that's underneath it? And if you can just even get any kind of handle on that fear, like, which is to say just a slight awareness that fear is there, then you can drop down deeper and see that fear of unworthy, not good enough, failure, which is telling you that you're looking through these glasses. So just even that information in itself is great to know that it was not good enough who sat for meditation, and not good enough had a really hard time with meditation. And it was not good enough who did the death scroll. And it was not good enough who took this external, like, narration to your day and said what a bunch of procrastination, ridiculous day, when really you should be working on that, the project of a lifetime. Right? That narrator is not good enough. And just even that in itself gives us this little more conscious of taking what was subconsciously going on up into the conscious. And if in that meditation there was just like one or two moments of like, what we can see from the more meta point of view is that you do not need much access to source before source is going to turn shit around in your life. Like, because it's the dominant, it's the current, is all that is. So it's like the current in the ocean is bringing everything to it. And even if it's a little creek, on this mountainside, the creek is going to flow to find the current in the ocean. And so even if you just had this little in the meditation that was this little creek, from the meta point of view, it's like you don't need much, that you'll find yourself, maybe it's not tomorrow and maybe it's not the next day, but maybe you'll find yourself in a week trying to sit again. Like, and
Yeah.
maybe what happens is Instagram starts populating, Kieran Trace stuff under you, or like in the meta view, there's, because that day was very intelligent, you didn't have any awareness of it, but over here there's an intelligence and there's this flow towards the current that's going to happen.
So this is brilliant, and let me just precise the brilliance even more, because
Please.
it is because, like, from the point of view of someone who had that kind of day, and whether you have that kind of day all the time or rarely, doesn't matter, but from the point of view of someone who's had that kind of day, it was just a bad day, and they're not seeing the intelligence, but the intelligence inheres in the fact that everything points to truth. Literally everything points to truth. So if like you were just saying, if you had that sort of a day, the day is pointing you to the truth of wearing not good enough glasses, and that's the intelligence. And so you've just given us such a great example that hopefully the listener realizes, oh, wait a second, if that's even true about that kind of day, then it's true about every day, it's true about every moment. And my inquiry can be just what aspect of truth is being pointed out now by the intelligence of aliveness. What aspect of truth is being pointed out that maybe I wasn't seeing, but I can see it in any moment. So brilliant.
Yeah, and you may, you guys listening are clearly listening a lot to Christopher's really precise language and pointers. But even if you don't have what, okay, then my inquiry should be, you know what I mean? Like you may not have that level of articulation and eloquence that Christopher does, but it can just be like, how is tomorrow, like, or how can this moment right now or the next moment just have a little more fulfillment, a little more aliveness. You know, we have, I have to go here shortly, but I just want to throw this out. We have a free course at Kieran Trace if you sign up for the newsletter that talks about making delicious choices. So it's just about one moment to the next moment to the next moment of how do you find that more alive place and how do you make that choice. Now it's a beautiful program and I really love that course. And what happens for a lot of people is in the course of the 7 days of that thing, maybe they only make 3 delicious choices out of the whole 7 days. But there's an awareness that happens that's like, oh, I don't, like I didn't have to death scroll on Instagram because like the meeting I didn't want to go to got canceled anyways. And I could have, gone to have a bath and a nap, but I didn't know I could do that because I thought I was supposed to be at the meeting and then the meeting got canceled. Like there's a kind of a hindsight awareness that opens up, even if you just made 3 delicious choices in 7 days. And that hindsight awareness um, can allow you that more of that flow towards the river. So I really want to encourage anybody listening to like sign up for that course. Also, you've been talking so eloquently about the when you have the lenses on. And we have a simple process, and I think Christopher, it's called 7 days to free your mind. And it's like a really quick way to take the glasses off, and it's by saying yes internally. It's like so many internal yeses to everything that's arising inside of you actually starts to pull the glasses off.
7 days to free your mind. And what was the name of the course you were mentioning before, the one about finding your delicious yes? What's the name of that course?
It's delicious, yes.
Okay.
It's called Delicious Yes. And you can sign up on our website. So you just sign up for my newsletter, or I think it might even be like the 7-day challenge on my website, but I'll send you the links so you can put them
Yeah.
in the description. But let's say any of your thousands of listeners are welcome to take that course for free. But I'd also like to give 50% off to your listeners for the 7 days to free your mind, because they're already doing your work, so that people are already in a beautiful process. So here's just like a quick complementary process to help reduce the resistance so that your work with Tantra Illuminated is hitting less filters. in yourself, like what's being said, and all this, these connective points being brought to you are coming in at a deeper level. It's like, well, here's a little hack to like complement the work that's being done there. So you could just write to us, team at Kieran Trace, and we'll give you a link for 50% off that course. It's not super expensive to begin with, but 50% off is
Yeah.
always great for the listeners of you guys. And I'll send you those
Beautiful.
links, or my team will.
Yeah. And I love this whole thing of finding your delicious yes, because, it's like our culture, people don't realize how influenced it is by this contracted, limited Protestant Christian worldview in which life is suffering and you need to suffer and your reward will be in heaven. And like people aren't Christian anymore in the same way that they were. Some are, but a lot of people aren't, but they're still being influenced by that. So they almost feel guilty about just going for their delicious yes. And it's like life
Yeah.
is too short to not do that,
It's really interesting because that again is the belief system of unworthy, right? I am unworthy. My joy, my pleasure, my emancipation is going to harm another person. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of it. So it's seen through those lenses again. But I
Yeah.
love this conversation, and I'm so sad that I have to go. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah.
Mwah, mwah. Bye. Love you guys.
Wonderful to meet you. For those who are interested in hearing Kieran's story or part of her story, like we didn't get to her story at all. It was just a freewheeling conversation, and that's what happened. But we can have another one. But if you are interested, it's really worth hearing her interviews on Bat Gap, Buddha at the Gas Pump. There's two actually. Really worth hearing that. Highly recommended. And in fact, if you hear that and then come back and hear this again, you might appreciate it more. Because Kieran, maybe is one of those people that is like you have to get her, and then you'll appreciate everything she's saying if you didn't at first. So I think that's a good place to start. There's many places, but those are some great interviews at Buddha at the Gas Pump, and to be continued in some form or another.
Hope you enjoyed the episode. Remember, you can always find out more about the tradition of non-dual Shaiva Tantra at tantrailluminated.org, where, if you wish, you can become a subscriber to our online learning portal, and you'll receive access to a vast number of recordings, including a comprehensive curriculum in tantric philosophy, tantric yoga practices, guided meditations, and much more. Music for the podcast composed and recorded by Ann Leader. Find her at annleader.com. Podcast produced by Paula Chamas. New episodes drop every other week. And may all beings benefit.